Hello, everyone, and welcome to my review of Deadpool and Wolverine, the new Deadpool movie. Going into this, I had previously watched clips of the first Deadpool movie a long time ago, and I watched the second Deadpool movie in, I think, freshman or sophomore year. So, leading up to this, last week I watched Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2, and I thought both of them were incredible movies. I do feel like overall, objectively, Deadpool 1 was the better film. However, subjectively, I prefer Deadpool 2 a lot, and I like Deadpool 2 quite a lot as a film. So I was extremely excited going into this one, having just watched both of those. And of course, I've been a longtime fan of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, as well as the X-Men in general. And Logan is one of my favorite Marvel movies ever. Heck, it's one of my favorite superhero movies, or even just movies of all time. So, going into this, starting off with non spoilers, is it a good film? There's obviously a lot of talk of the town everywhere across the internet about this movie, and yeah, it definitely lives up to the hype. It's a fantastic film. It blew me away. I It's been a while since I felt this way in a movie theater. I had a similar thought with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but really I haven't felt this way in a movie theater since like Avengers Endgame. Not even really Endgame, probably Infinity War. It definitely it hits me with a lot of nostalgia here, and I think that there's some amazing cameos here, which I'm very excited to talk about. But going into this, the character of Deadpool is done very well. The character of Wolverine is done very well. Both Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman do fantastic jobs as actors here. Um, and while I'm not I'm not really sold on Deadpool's motivation in this film. I just think that it's far, far weaker than what the previous two films had. Hugh Jackman, the Wolverine's motivation is all right. I'll talk about that a little bit in the spoiler section. The plot is overall, in my opinion, not the best. I think it is the weakest structured plot of the three movies. But at the same time, it's a Deadpool movie. I'm not going into this expecting The Dark Knight. Uh, it the plot works well enough for what it is, and I don't think anyone's here for the mystical, super well written plot. But I think absolutely Marvel fans, X Men fans will enjoy this film. Another thing, so the music actually in this film, I feel like a lot of it isn't like music I would imagine would be here, but nearly every single song just works really well, and I was incredibly surprised, especially with the final major fight scene and the final big climactic moment. The music was wonderful, and I really was not expecting that. The comedy, of course, it's what you'd expect. There's a lot of comedy, and I'll be honest here. I think this is probably, to me personally, the funniest Deadpool movie. I like the comedy the best here out of the three films. And ultimately, when this was over, I felt like this movie was a love letter to the Fox Marvel films that have come before it. Now, I'm going to jump into spoilers here in a second. If you haven't seen the film yet, it's been out for a week. I'm late to the game on this. Go see it. It is a phenomenal movie, and it's absolutely one of the best things Marvel and Disney Marvel has put out in years. Now, jumping into spoilers, I'm going to talk a lot about cameos here because that was probably one of my favorite parts of this film. Let's see. The opening sequence. So, I had questionable feelings going into this film, knowing that Hugh Jackman would reprise his role as Logan. And how do we open this film? Literally by desecrating the grave of Logan, and one of the best endings to a superhero film I've ever seen. I think in a way, it's very meta. I think it represents a lot of what not only superhero films, but just generally a lot of films these days have been doing, desecrating the graves of what was once great, and in a lot of cases, it's just to make a cheap buck. However, this film does it in a very comedic way and a very fun way, and I think there were some people who certainly did not like the ending of Logan with how he died, and to a degree, yes, I can understand that. And maybe in a weird way, you could say this opening sequence of Deadpool using the skeleton of Logan to kill all the TVA people is a way of him spreading the ashes of Logan's corpse. That certainly is a fun way you could look at it. And I think that while I wouldn't say this scene was done out of disrespect towards Logan, I think it's done in a very comedic way that even people like myself who have a vast deal of enjoyment and gratitude for that movie will still be okay with what's present here in this opening sequence. Vanessa. Vanessa, this whole situation is probably my least favorite point in the film, and inarguably to me the weakest part of this film is just Vanessa leaving Wade. It's ridiculous. He saves her in the first movie. They get back together, and then so I didn't actually know the second part here. He uses Cable's time watch to bring her back to life in a post-credit scene of the second film. I had no idea that happened. I had to research that and YouTube it after I watched this movie. And after all of that, she leaves him because he's not great enough or like he's not doing enough with his powers. It just, it was ridiculous to me. I really did not like that choice. I did like Wade's birthday party. And I think one thing that's a bummer with this movie is while we have a lot of great cameos, a lot of great action sequences, and a lot of great characters, these people that we followed for the first two movies, this is pretty much the only time that they're here. People like Blind Owl, Vanessa, uh, Dopender, I think. I cannot quite remember that name off the top of my head. This scene and the ending for some of them is the only time they appear in the entire film. It is a bummer, but under the plot line of this film, I suppose it does make sense. The TVA scene was interesting. I saw this in the first trailer and I wasn't really sure how this would tie in to Deadpool. I've only watched Loki season 1, and that was back when it came out. I don't even remember how long ago that was. So I don't necessarily understand everything that's going on here, but I really like the way they handled Deadpool here, and I feel like this was the most natural and really just acceptable way to bring him into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's also the mention of anchor beings, which is completely new to me. It might be something from the comics, it might be something new made up here. I'm not sure. I'm very on the fence on how I feel about it. But this leads us into the sequence, and I'm going to run through every single Wolverine cameo here because I know pretty much all of them because I'm a massive Wolverine nerd. Every single cameo here was great. We had the comic accurate height Wolverine, the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, Patch Wolverine, Old Man Logan, which I did read a chunk of that comic in preparation for the Logan film back in the day. And then I think this one was the one on the cross was Wolverine from the cover of Uncanny X-Men, but I could be completely wrong about that. Let's see. Then we had the brown and tan suit with the Hulk cameo, which that was really fun. And then definitely the best one was Henry Cavill as Wolverine. Oh my goodness, that had my theater cheering. That was fantastic. The next TVA scene, or after the next TVA scene, we enter the Void, and this is where we do spend a majority of the film. The 20th Century Fox logo did get a really good laugh out of me and the rest of my theater. Overall, I'd say my theater was quite vocal, laughing and cheering all the way through the movie. It was really fun. Certainly not a quiet theater experience, and I love that. The ensuing fight between Wolverine and Deadpool, ooh, this was fun. This was a real treat because seeing both of them go at it with their healing powers, obviously, and it was a rated R fight. It had such brutality. The choreography was amazing, and I loved it from start to finish. Chris Evans showing up was unexpected. I know we saw like the red, white, and blue on his arm, and we thought, okay, it's Captain America, which honestly I would have been very disappointed if this was Captain America. Um, Even with Robert Downey Jr. returning as Doctor Doom, that's another thing I'm very on the fence about. I could go either way. I just gotta see it for what it is when Avengers Doomsday. I don't remember. Whenever that film comes out, I haven't kept up with Marvel as much these days, honestly. But then he shouts, "Flame on!" and rises into the sky as Human Torch. And oh my goodness, I was cheering. My theater was cheering. I remember back when those Fantastic Four films came out. I remember watching them as a kid. It was so much fun to see him return here. Then we also had the actors for Sabretooth, Toad, and Pyro return from the original X-Men trilogy. Now, this is another very disappointing part of this film to me, was Wolverine versus Sabretooth. I was very hyped for this fight, especially considering the fight we had just gotten moments prior. Even Deadpool himself hypes up this fight, and it's over in just one attack. And I did not like that. There was so much potential here. And I highly doubt that we'll get to see another fight like this play out in the future, especially with both of these actors from the original X-Men film from, I believe, 2000 or maybe 2002. I'm not quite sure. I wasn't born then, uh, but I do know that they were right around that time. The return of Juggernaut was a real treat for me. Of course, I do prefer the Juggernaut from Deadpool 2, and I had a small amount of hope that he would return in this film, considering he did not die in Deadpool 2. But given the helmet sequence later on, it is understandable that we have the Juggernaut from X3 The Last Stand. Now, as far as the antagonist, before going into this film, I knew a lot about Cassandra Nova, and I was extremely excited when I learned that she would be the primary antagonist of this movie, and that we'd actually get to see her in live action for the first time. And I think that her representation, her performance, her character, it was phenomenal. It was certainly a very strong point of this movie for me, and I absolutely loved her every single time she was on screen. Johnny's death was sudden, gruesome, creative, and I love it. This is absolutely the kind of thing that I wanted to see from Cassandra in a Marvel film, or even a rated R film, or just seeing from her in general. Nice Pool and Dogpool, a very fun addition, quite comical when they showed up. However, this dog drove me crazy. I usually can stand a lot of things, but this dog just drove me insane. It, it's not the dog's fault, but like, yikes! It's quite a sight for the eyes. Then we have the joke about Wolverine usually being shirtless, but he let himself go since the divorce. That one really had me busting a gut. It's not my favorite joke in this film, and we'll get there. There was one that I was almost crying because of how hard I was laughing. The car fight, another really good one here. I would even say this is my favorite piece of choreography from this film. I love the car fight, and especially Wolverine's monologue or speech before they fight. Ooh, that hit hard. Overall, just this whole like 3 minute sequence here, super, super well done. After this fight, we get some of my favorite cameos in this movie. We have Elektra uh, from the Daredevil and Elektra films from the early 2000s. We have the return of Blade, which was very exciting. And we have Channing Tatum as a live action Gambit. Now, it wasn't until after I'd watched this film that I found out there was a Channing Tatum Gambit film in the works forever ago. But it was just exciting to see a live action Gambit here. And then we had X-23, or Laura. This was absolutely my favorite cameo of the film, and I just loved seeing her again. And then the conversation between her and Logan at the campfire. This is absolutely the kind of thing I would have wanted to see from this Wolverine and Laura interacting. Now, my favorite joke in the entire film was when Gambit just kept talking, and slowly each line he said, you could just understand him less and less. And then Deadpool was like, "Who's your dialect coach? The Minions?" I was laughing. I was laughing so hard in this theater. So was the rest of my theater, and so was my family. It, oh my goodness, I was almost crying the way that Ryan Reynolds had delivered that line. Now, the Wolverine backstory for me in this film, we've seen Wolverine done a lot, and I think that this backstory is just all right. It works well enough for the film. I really would have preferred to have actually seen it or seen parts of it or some kind of sequence overlaying Logan talking about it. But I think that overall it works well enough. Laura versus Juggernaut was not the best fight in the movie, but I had a great time with that. And I love Laura's importance and involvement in getting the Juggernaut helmet to Deadpool. I really wish that we had gotten a Logan and Laura team up, if only just for a second during that initial big clash between everyone. But, I mean, what can you do? And of course, the joke about Hugh doing this till he's 90, that was another pretty good one. I like a lot of the jokes made about Wolverine, honestly. Now, the Deadpool core is not my favorite addition to this movie. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm not the world's biggest Deadpool fan. However, these do make for some very hilarious and fun cameos and a all around pretty good battle. Wolverine putting on the mask is such a wonderful scene. It's over 2 decades, and finally we get it here at the climax of this movie, and it actually looks pretty good. Now, while the panning shot of this big epic battle was neat, I just was not the biggest fan of it, especially when, very recently, well, not very recently, we've had things like the hallway fight scene from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. That being said, the final shot of the two of them jumping out of the bus was really dope. I loved that a lot. Now, something here that made absolutely no sense to me at all whatsoever, and it's probably because I'm not a big Deadpool fan, is Peter. I thought Peter was a funny character in Deadpool 2. I liked him. But he just shows up and everybody stops fighting because he says that they're with him. And everybody loves Peter. And I was scratching my head as to why. Who is Peter? I was very, very confused by that. And the climax of this film is not my favorite. We get some really good scenes and some really good jokes here between Wade and Logan, but they just kind of stand there. And okay, the Logan shirtless scene was really cool, but Cassandra gets obliterated, and that's just kind of it. The antimatter and matter fusing, it just kind of left my mouth a bit dry. And I feel like part of it has to do with this thing that Wade makes a joke about. Can we just be done with the multiverse thing? It's gotten bland, it's gotten stale. We're all tired of it. But then the climax of this movie is like a multiverse plot line where they need to stop the destruction of timelines. So I feel like that's a very double edged sword. I do think it's been done better here in this film than it has in other ones. But like I said, overall, the climax did leave my mouth a bit dry as far as what all occurred, I guess. The Scoutmaster Kevin joke, that was pretty funny. And it also was calling back to the Scoutmaster Kevin joke from Deadpool 2. And then, very end of the film, we have Wade and Vanessa again. And I don't like this. I just don't. I think there's other ways around it they could have done things. And just the way it ended here with Wade and Vanessa, sure, it's cool they get back together again, but that just felt super. What's the word? It didn't really need to happen in the first place. And so I didn't like it. Now, the final panning shot of the two masks at the end was quite nice. And overall, I think this was an incredible movie. I think that both Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman did an amazing job here. And I think that the Marvel team has put together something really special. I think this film absolutely deserves to be remembered, and I think it absolutely deserves the hype and talk of the town that it's getting. I won't disagree with that at all. Overall, I'd probably give this film like an 8, probably around an 8. And a lot of that does have to do with the funny jokes, the incredible cameos. I love Hugh Jackman a lot, and so maybe that's influencing my decision a bit. But I do legitimately think this is a very, very good movie. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, it's not my favorite Marvel movie, but it is very good. It's certainly high up there, and it does have me at least decently excited for future Marvel projects. I think that Marvel is not as dead as I had thought last year or the year prior, especially with Thor and Doctor Strange and all of that stuff. Um, and there certainly are some Marvel films I'm going to skip upcoming, and there are some ones I'm definitely going to watch. I'm just going to play it by ear. But yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, uh, which I feel like you should have if you watched this far in the video, go watch it. If you have seen it, I'm sure you probably agree with me on most of my points, and I hope everyone who's made it this far has a good day. And thank you for watching as far as you have. Bye, guys.